we're going to work on applying a principle of Pilates to core work. We're doing 4 exercises that are very common and people don't think of as Pilates moves, traditional Pilates moves. But using one principle of Pilates, lengthening through the spine, can translate to much better workout, much better form, and much better functional and strength gains. So I want you to start by standing. And the first thing you're going to do, we're going to work on lengthening through the spine and just get that sense of length. Think about this, where a seat belt falls on your lap, and I want you to pull your abdominals in away from that seat belt, that imaginary seat belt. Now you're not tucking under, you're just drawing in and tightening those transverse abdominal muscles. And then the second thing is standing up tall. Okay, so a lot of people think of this as a string pulling through the top of their head, bringing them up nice and tall. Palms forward, shoulders down and back. Now the only thing you might notice with this is as you do this, you might tip forward in the ribs, draw them in a little bit. And this can seem pretty complicated when you first started. It's a lot of steps, but it becomes very automatic as you use it in your core work every time you work out. And then tighten the glutes, quads, hamstrings, inner thighs, just slightly. You're not clenching, you're just slightly increasing the tension in those muscles. And finally, most important thing, don't forget to breathe, because a lot of times we get into this good posture and we hold our breath. We go and hold our breath. And you want a nice relaxed down and back shoulder, abs drawn in, up nice and tall, just a little bit of tension in the glutes and thighs. Now, of course, when we move onto the floor to do our 4 exercises, you're not going to be able to maintain this precise posture. But think of this length that you're feeling through your spine right now. You've increased the space between the vertebrae. You've decompressed. And so you want to maintain that. So as you do flexion and side bending and rotation and extension, you maintain that length and you're not squishing and compressing through the spine. So let's take it down on the floor. Bring it down and on your back. And we are starting out with basic crunch. And what we're trying to avoid here is this pulling on the head, compressing through the spine, squishing motion with the crunch. So take just a minute. Think about that seat belt across your transverse abdominals, drawing down and away without tucking your pelvis under. Length through the spine. Now your palms are forward, they're up behind the head, but you've got your shoulders open and wide, shoulders down and back. And you're trying to maintain this open feeling through your chest, because the only thing you're trying to do with a crunch is pull your ribs, the bottom of your ribs, towards your pelvis. You're not working the pecs, you're not working the chest curling in, you're just working the abdominals. So lengthen and lift. Keep your elbows wide and lift. We're doing 8 more. 8, 7, 6, and if you want to, as you're doing this, you don't even have to lift up this high. Just focus on those abdominals. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, now we're moving into the bicycle crunch. Don't ask me why it's called bicycle, because I've never seen anybody ride a bicycle like this. But your knees are over your hips. Same thing, you're focusing on that region between your ribs and your pelvis. You're working your obliques. So you're working on rotation and not crunching way over and getting the shoulders involved, because you're not working the pecs, chest muscles, you're working the abdominals. You're coming over and center, over and center, over and center. Again, thinking of the abdominals. We're going to do 8 more of these. 7, 6, 5. You can decrease how far your foot goes out. 3, 2, and 1. Bring it down. Now, side bending. We are going into a side plank, and most common thing that people do with this is, first of all, this elbow is out and not under, so you can't get that, when it's out like this, you can't get that shoulder blade down and back, so you're supporting your spine, that length through the spine. The other thing is people flex back at their hips, and you want to be forward, so you have this length through the spine. You can do this with up on your toes or with the bottom knee bent. Either way, just make sure your hips are forward and you have this straight, long line going here. Okay, so bring it up, and this hand can be on the floor here or up. Length through the spine, transverse abs in, and shoulder back. Take it down, up, down, and up. 8 more. Up, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, and 1. Bring it down. And so that's a lot of loading on the shoulder as well. If your shoulder is bothering you while you're doing that, make sure you leave the knee down, because although we're working the shoulder, we're primarily focusing on lateral flexion of the trunk and pulling the ribs towards the pelvis here. Okay, same thing, hand wherever you want it. If you have it forward here for extra support, make sure you've got this shoulder back as best as you can. It's a little bit better if you can have this hand up or up towards the ceiling. Lengthen through the spine. 8 more. 7, 6, 4 more. Hips forward. 3, 2, and 1. Okay, we've done flexion, rotation, side bending or lateral flexion, and now we're working an extension. So we're moving into a plank, and in the plank, shoulders, key is shoulders down and back. And this is where you get to really activate the glutes and thighs and put some tension there to help support your core. All right, so shoulders down away from your ears, lengthen through the spine, pull in those transverse abdominals. So if you think of that seat belt analogy, that pulls your abdominals in without bringing the hips up. So then in this position, you've got some tension in your glutes and thighs, and you're lifting one foot and then the other without lifting the hips. And you can do this on your knees if you want. Same thing though, transverse abdominals engaged. You're working extension of the trunk. We've got about 8 more. 7, 6, 4 more. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bring it down into a sitting position. And as you're working out, as you take a break, you can do this in standing or sitting. Go through that lengthening of the spine that we did at the beginning. If you find that in this position you're tight through your hips and you're rounded forward, sit up in a chair or up on a yoga block. So bring yourself up nice and tall. Pull in away from that seat belt. Length through the spine. Shoulders open. Down and back. Pull in those ribs just a little bit if they're flaring out. And of course, in a sitting position, you don't really engage the glutes or thighs, but you would do that in standing. So try all of this. Make sure you're breathing as you do these exercises. But try applying this to just your normal core work. And I think that you'll really like the way you feel just more, there's more space in your spine. You're not getting crunched and compressed. And you should see better results, better functional movement as a result of using this in your workout.